You've probably eaten this cereal 100 times. Same box, same mascot, same name on the shelf, whether you're standing in a grocery store in Ohio or a supermarket in Manchester. But if you actually put the two boxes side by side, the American one and the European one, you'd notice something strange. The colors are different. The ingredient list is different. In some cases, the entire recipe is different. Same brand, same name, two completely different products. This isn't a conspiracy. It's not a scandal exactly. It's regulation. And once you understand how it works, you'll never look at a cereal box the same way again. Let's start with the one everyone already has an opinion about. Fruit Loops. In the United States, Fruit Loops gets its rainbow colors from a set of synthetic dyes: red 40, yellow 5, yellow 6, and blue 1. These are FDA approved. They've been used in American food for decades. They're cheap, they're stable, they don't fade, and they make the cereal look exactly the same in every single box, every single time. Cross the Atlantic and the picture changes. The UK and EU version of the same cereal, same name, same mascot, same box design, uses colors derived from things like beetroot, radish, blackcurrant, and annatto. Plant-based pigments instead of synthetic ones. Why the difference? It's not that the company suddenly cares more about British kids than American kids. It's that European regulation requires it. Since 2010, EU law has mandated that any food containing certain synthetic dyes, specifically the ones used in the American version of this cereal, must carry a warning label stating that the coloring may have an adverse effect on activity and attention in children. That requirement traces back to a 2007 study out of the University of Southampton, which found a possible link between certain artificial food dyes and hyperactivity in children. The findings were debated, some scientists pushed back on the methodology, and the evidence is still described as mixed rather than conclusive. But mixed evidence was enough for European regulators to act. Rather than put a warning label on a children's cereal box, most manufacturers simply reformulated the product for that market. The American version never got that warning label because the FDA reached a different conclusion. In 2011, the FDA reviewed the same body of evidence and determined that a causal link between synthetic dyes and hyperactivity in the general population of children hadn't been established. No warning required, no reformulation required. The original recipe stayed exactly as it was. So you end up with two versions of the same cereal, made by the same company, sold under the same name, one colored with beetroot juice, one colored with petroleum-derived dyes, because two regulatory bodies looked at the same research and drew different lines. That's the pattern you're going to see again and again in this video. It's not that one country is being poisoned and the other isn't. It's that two systems have different thresholds for what counts as acceptable uncertainty. And food companies, being food companies, will always formulate to the lowest common denominator required by whichever market they're selling into. Let's look at another one, Lucky Charms. The American version contains BHT, butylated hydroxytoluene, a synthetic preservative used to keep the fats in the cereal from going rancid on the shelf. BHT has been used in U.S. food packaging and products since the 1950s. It is on the FDA list of substances generally recognized as safe. The European Union permits BHT in food as well, technically, but with far tighter restrictions on quantity and category of use, and some individual EU countries have gone further, restricting or discouraging it in products marketed to children specifically. Faced with that patchwork, most manufacturers found it simpler to just leave BHT out of the UK and EU formulation entirely and use natural tocopherols, essentially vitamin E, as the preservative instead. Slightly shorter shelf life, no BHT on the label, same brand, same box art, different chemistry because the regulatory bar was set at a different height. Now here's where it gets more interesting, because not every difference between the United States and the United Kingdom version comes from a health regulation. Some of it comes from tax policy. In 2018, the United Kingdom introduced what is officially called the Soft Drinks Industry Levy, and everyone just calls it the sugar tax. It technically only applies to sugary drinks, not cereal, but its ripple effect on the entire United Kingdom food industry was enormous because it triggered a wave of voluntary reformulation across categories that weren't even taxed, as manufacturers tried to get ahead of anticipated future regulation and align with Public Health England's broader sugar reduction targets for children's food. Cereal was one of the categories that got swept up in that shift. Frosted Flakes, sold in the United Kingdom as Frosties, has meaningfully less sugar per serving in its United Kingdom formulation than the American version. Same story with several other children's cereals from major manufacturers. It is not because sugar is banned or restricted in the United Kingdom. It is because there has been sustained regulatory and public health pressure to bring sugar content down in products aimed at kids. And companies responded by quietly adjusting recipes market by market, years before anyone tried to fully coordinate labeling laws across it. This is the part people miss when they frame these comparisons as Europe protects you, America doesn't. It's messier than that. It's a mix of hard regulation, like the synthetic dye warning label law, soft regulatory pressure, like the sugar reformulation push, and plain old market difference. The UK cereal market is smaller and more price sensitive in certain categories, which pushes manufacturers toward cheaper natural colorants anyway, independent of any law. So how do you actually use this standing in a grocery store without needing a chemistry degree? Here's the method. When you are looking at any packaged food, there are 3 fields worth actually reading, not just glancing at. First, the coloring agents. If you see a color listed as a number, like red 40 or yellow 5 on a US label, or the equivalent E number system used in Europe, such as E129, E102, and E133, that tells you it is synthetic. If it is listed as beetroot extract, annatto, paprika extract, or a specific plant or vegetable name, it is derived from a natural source. Neither one is automatically dangerous. But if you are trying to reduce synthetic dye intake specifically, that is the field to check first. Second, the preservative list. BHT and BHA are the 2 to know. Both are legal in the US with few restrictions. Both are more tightly restricted and in some product categories effectively avoided across the EU. If a product does not need a long shelf life, something you are going to eat within a week or 2 anyway, the presence of BHT or BHA is more about manufacturing convenience than necessity. Third, and this one takes 10 seconds, check whether the product lists a country of origin or import statement. In the US, imported EU formulated versions of familiar snack brands have started showing up in specialty grocery stores and online. If you are specifically trying to buy the European formulation of something, that is often your fastest way to actually get it, rather than assuming your normal grocery store version is identical to what is sold overseas. None of this means the American version of any of these products is unsafe. The FDA has its own review process, its own safety thresholds, and its own scientific advisory bodies. And by US regulatory standards, all of these products are approved and legal. What's actually going on here isn't a story about one country being reckless and another being careful. It's a story about 2 different regulatory philosophies. One that requires proof of harm before restricting an ingredient, and one that restricts based on a lower threshold of suspected risk, even when the science isn't fully settled. Which philosophy you trust more is genuinely up to you. But you can't make that call if you don't know the difference exists in the first place. And most people standing in a cereal aisle have no idea that the box in their hand might contain a meaningfully different product than the identical looking box sold 3,000 miles away. That's what this channel is going to do. Not tell you what's safe and what's dangerous, just show you brand by brand, category by category, exactly where the line is drawn differently, and let you decide which side of it you want to be shopping on. If you want to actually read a European ingredient label yourself, decode the E numbers, understand the allergen bolding rules, know what may contain traces of actually legally means. That's coming in the next video. Subscribe if you want to see it. This channel compares food and product standards across the US, UK, and EU using publicly available regulatory information, ingredient labels, and government sources. It's for informational and entertainment purposes only. Regulations and product formulations change, so always check current labels and official sources for yourself.